Good evening and welcome to TalkSports, our weekly program where we chat with the movers and shakers of sports, the sportsmen, the sportswomen, as well as the administrators, even the coaches, because today we'll be speaking with a very important person, a coach, former athlete himself, one of Grenada's most outstanding track and field coaches. And I will tell you why outstanding in the context. And I said track and field, but it's more to track and field because this coach has been involved, yes, primarily unknown, primarily in track and field. But when we speak with this coach, and I'm saying this coach, you will get to know that it's not just track and field, it's all about sports, and to an extent, as what we have been seeing of recent mentor, the whole issue of mentorship and, emulating others, and encouraging, inspiring others. And therefore, I'm happy to be in company, I should say, with this special son of the soil in terms of Grenada and coach. Son of the soil, yes, Grenada, but his exploits have not stayed just within the shores of Grenada. And again, you will hear all about it. So let me welcome to our program for the first time on the program, Mr. Paul Phillip. Yes, Paul Phillip. It has been quite a while in terms of tracking him down, but I've been able to, and for some reason or the other, been successful enough to get him, not in Grenada, but this time somewhere far, far, far. In fact, he's in Bratislava in Slovakia. I hope by the time he comes out there, he'll be speaking Slovak, or you'll know some words of Slovak. Good evening to you, Paul, and welcome to the program. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Michael, and good evening to all the listeners.
Right. TalkSports. Yes, it's a pleasure having you, and we have quite a lot to talk about regarding the whole issue of your involvement in coaching. And I said, not your involvement in track and field, but in coaching, right? But first of all, Paul, how things are going, and probably you can tell the viewers why you are in so far a place of Slovakia at this point in time.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting to follow the journey to be here. Not that I want to be away from home now, but I was called to duty by our world champion Anderson Peters. Anderson has turned pro in 2019, and so as a professional athlete, you have to get what you call on the circuit. So that has taken me over to Europe, and we found a base in Slovakia, which is a very nice facility for preparing athletes for competition. It's kind of central to most of the competitions for javelin throwers, and it's a world-class facility right here. The weather is good. It's not Grenada weather, but it's pretty close on most days.
Mm-hmm. And I know that has been your calling for quite a while in terms of that sort of experience in, the Eastern European countries in particular, because of their exploits over the years. Some of the Nordic regions, whether it's Norway, Denmark, Finland, Slovakia, they have excelled over the years in the field events in particular. So I think to an extent you will say you and Anderson are at home to an extent.
Yeah, Europe is the hub for the javelin. For example, not too far away from here in the Czech Republic, it lives the world record holder. Right. Next door is the German who's leading the world, and many others. Finland is known as the home of the javelin. If there is a comparison to be made, like you say, soccer and Brazil you have to say Javelin and Finland. So it has been in the vision, my vision, for a very long time, to be exposed to the places that are known for the javelin throwers. Maybe we're here before we expected. And I say that because the dream of having a world-class javelin thrower has come to the level where we would have now achieved world-class standing, and Anderson is the world champion. But I always thought of getting here and try to learn what they are doing, to enable us to be able to develop the javelin in our region.
Well, let's say that Anderson's success more or less fast-tracked your dream of being in Europe, because I recall even before Anderson reached that level, you said in a couple of interviews, some years ago, of your desire to get there. And in addition to that, Paul, the level of competition, because you know that in Europe, and you can probably move from city to city to compete every week if you want in some high level of competition.
Yeah, that is what is very, very interesting here. I mean, you can get many small meets, you can get different level meets, and I think even with COVID, you're finding that the meets are still being put on this year as to give athletes an opportunity to compete and get ready for the bigger meet of the season, which is the Olympic Games. So it's really a nice place to be, the best place to be for javelin throwing, for competition and for training.
Let's talk about, since Anderson decided to turn pro, how it has been for him as an athlete, now as a professional athlete, I should say, on the circuit, you as the coach and moving around. How has the experience been, you would describe?
Well, I must say it's not yet really got going. I mean, Anderson did 2 meets on the circuit so far. I was not in Europe at that time. I was at Santa Barbara training facility there, where Lindon and Cut or the Decathletes are based. So I spent like 3 weeks there. Anderson joined us before he heading over to Europe. I had to remain there a little bit longer, and this is like my first week here, so it would really be my first meet with him on the circuit. But for him, it has been, according to reports, it has been challenging, but exciting to see the prospects of what we can produce. I mean, if you would have followed the 2 meets so far, you realize that he was fourth place in the Gateshead meet, and in the Ostrava meet he was second. Both performances were, I should say, subpar for the world champion, but we must appreciate that Anderson is coming from his final semester and graduation from the University from Mississippi State University. So it has been a slow start to the season, but since being here for the last week, we've really worked on stuff, and I think we're heading into a competition tomorrow to test out and see where this training has taken us. So it will be very interesting to see the rest of the season, what it produces.
I agree, and I like the phrase that a slow start. It fits in well, because yes, coming off of as you say, the semester and studies and all of that, he's now getting, as you say, getting into the groove, and hopefully, as you say, it's more or less gauging. It was, as you say, probably gauging his level of readiness for that level of competition. But you think, Paul, there is sufficient time still for Anderson for the big test for Tokyo?
Yes, I'm very confident in what I do, and when Anderson said to me, coach, everybody usually when they go on the circuit, they have their coaches with them, and I think I want to have you with me over here. I said to him, listen, this is not ordinary times, and I mean, I don't really want to be in any place where I'm going to be exposed to COVID or anything like that. But I made the decision to be here because I think if you notice, Anderson throws well when he's in the college system as well. But when he comes home, there's a difference in his performances, and that is what this arrangement here will do. As for his physical preparation, talking about strength now, his strength and conditioning is where I would like it to be at this time. Technically, his execution of certain aspects of the throwing is not where it should be. And that is what I am here to fix. And that is what the relationship, the being together, the living together will pull together, and we'll be ready for the Olympics.
Well, yeah, well, that's quite understandable. We will try to get back to Anderson as well as our main, subject. But interestingly enough, you mentioned Lindon Victor and Kurt Felix, because again, as I'm saying, and as I said in the introduction, that to an extent, Anderson is not your only charge, and I know that you're in demand in terms of coaching, in terms of programs, and sometimes I want to think about how you get to split your time, because I'm certain so many other athletes are trying to get from you the programs and things like that, and you have to follow up on these athletes, whether it's Kandisha, whether it's then you have Anderson as your main charge, but all these other athletes, and you just mentioned Lindon Victor and Kurt Felix, no stranger to you though, because your involvement with them has been over the years as junior athletes, and now they are on the professional scene as well. Give us a bit about what is happening with Kurt Felix and Lindon Victor.
Lindon and Kurt are both based at the Santa Barbara Track Club in California. And they have been there for the last 3 years, I think, under the supervision of Coach Josh. And they're doing a fine job. I think we expect to see some good performances coming from both these guys this year. Unfortunately, there was a little setback with Lindon, but he would have been competing in the Gotsis meet just went over the weekend, but there was a little setback. But I think he's in fine form. Kurt is a little bit more challenging for him because, as you can appreciate, he's the older of the two brothers, and as you age, your body do not respond the same way when you're younger. But I was there with them for about 3 weeks, and I'm very, very happy. I'm very pleased to see how these young men go about the business of being professional athletes, and I look forward with excitement to what they will produce for the rest of the season. Of course, the major focus this season is getting to the Olympics and getting onto the podium, and I think they are ready.
Oh, well, it's good to hear that, because up to last week, I think, last week, the question was raised as to what has been happening with Kurt Felix and Lindon Victor. They have been a bit, silent, quiet. When I say in terms of, competition, others have been following, whether it was Kirani and Anderson and others on the circuit, and they have not heard much about these two, so they were wondering what's in store for them, whether they are on the circuit this year, whether they're in competition this year. But it's good to hear that you have been following the exploits, and as you said, they will be ready.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit difficult for persons doing the combine events. Usually they would kind of gauge the season by doing individual events, but you have to appreciate that you can't really do a decathlon very regularly.
Every weekend or every other weekend.
Yeah, it's 10 events that you have to master and bring your best game in each event, and that's a long process, and it's just not something that you would see from those guys. You wouldn't see them competing in a decathlon probably ahead of a major meet, too close to a major meet, and all of these kinds of things. So they have been competing in individual events. Lindon, for example, would have done an exceptionally good pole vault meet a few weeks ago in Chula Vista. He had a huge personal best in the pole vault. He did a few meets where he did the discus, where he did the shot put, where he did the hurdles. So it's a combination of all these little testing and adjusting and testing and adjusting that will culminate in the big meet, which, as again I said, this season would be the Olympic Games.
And working particularly on what you would consider the weak events like the pole vault and these sort of things. Good to know, because it's interesting that you mentioned about the decathlon, because people know that at the end of a decathlon, athletes sometimes passed out, so and then you have the period for recovery, so it's not a situation where every weekend athletes can compete and have a day or two to recover and then get back to training and then compete again in the decathlon, multi-events, combined events, and 10 events over 2 days. I mean, yeah, it's tired. But Paul, let's look now at some of the other charges. And by the way, I should also forgive me for mentioning that your involvement in assisting the para-athletes as well, okay? I spoke to one some months ago, just trying to remember her name, and she did mention...
Shana Charles.
Right, Shana Charles, yes, Miss Charles, right. And she did mention your involvement in terms of the program and how you have assisted her. She never probably thought with her disability, she would be, being involved in an event as Javelin, for example, because it has to do with the arm, it has to do with throwing, but how she has been able to master the technique, So let's look a bit about your involvement with other athletes as well. And I mentioned Candicia Scott as one of those athletes, because all we remember 2016 when you felt proud because both Candicia Scott and Anderson Peters in their final years at the Carifta Games were able to, finish their Carifta sojo with gold medals, Are you, to an extent, satisfied, Paul, that you have done as much as you could, as it is now, with these athletes and getting them into the fore, getting them into accepting their true potential? Because I'm certain some of them would have doubted their potential, and you had the task to, to convince them that they could excel. Are you satisfied?
I want to be clear on the answer, because
and clear, be honest with the answer. Don't sugarcoat them, because I know, Paul, that you definitely had to encourage some of them in terms of their potential. You have seen athletes, you have known them, and at times, I'm speaking of when I spoke to you many years ago, you have identified the talents, you have identified potential of athletes. They have been doubting themselves, and you had to take on the task of encouraging them, and certainly to an extent they excel.
Well, yeah. it's the task of a coach, and
Right.
you first time you have to identify the talent. And in Anderson's case, it's probably the most famous case because Anderson wanted to be the Usain Bolt of Grenada, and people would remember Anderson at Intercol
Yeah.
as one of our top sprinters.
Sprinters, yeah, doing the 100, right, yeah.
So, and then there was there was another talk of him becoming a successor to Lindon and Good. So it was my job to convince the young man at the time that hello, there is not gonna be no Anderson Peters running against no Usain Bolt and no Johan Blake and all of these Jamaican sprinters and becoming nothing. Let us look at the exploits in another event. And I thought that the javelin, given his understanding of it and his speed that he had naturally, also his discipline as a person, would translate to becoming a world-class javelin thrower. So it's a constant sharing of knowledge, sharing of vision, coaxing, and sometimes getting into people's private and personal business to really inspire and motivate them to be able to make the right decisions. So I'm constantly in touch with nearly all of our athletes that I would have touched in some way. And I think of Josh Botang as one of the athletes. And he's going through a little frustrated period right now. He's just sustained an injury. But I am in almost daily consultation with most of our top athletes because it is needed. Right? In some instances, those in the college system do not always have the best coaches. They do not always have the best team of persons around them. And you need to be reminding them of, hello, we came from such and such background and we are looking to go to higher heights. And these are the things that we need to do. And you know what I'm saying? So it's constantly reminding them. And to say that I'm happy, yes, I'm happy when you look and you see, first and foremost, that we have a very high rate of our athletes graduating from university. That's the primary reason for me dedicating my life towards sports and developing young people and things like that. Then there is those who have the potential to take it beyond just the collegiate system. You have to work with them as well to keep them on the path to stardom, because it will come sometime. If you stick to it long enough, if you remain healthy, good things could happen, things that probably they don't have in their visions. So I'm happy, yes, and ready and willing to continue the sacrifice. That's why I'm in Grenada, ready.
And Paul, over the years, while you're on that, the focus, attention, and even successes to an extent, and I probably didn't blame Anderson at the time, it has been primarily in the sprints for the Caribbean. 100, the 200, the 400. Little has been known of the Caribbean and the English-speaking Caribbean in particular excelling in combined events at the international stage. Whether it's in the decathlon, whether it's in the javelin, well, the throws in particular. But since that of Keishon Walcott and Anderson Peters, Keishon first as the Olympic champion in 2012 in London, and then Anderson as the world champion in Doha, there has been that sort of focus and interest in terms of the field events and throws in particular from the English-speaking Caribbean, albeit the junior athletes excelled at the Carifta Games back then. Let's talk a bit about that, Paul, and what do you think, or why you think there is so much success now and interest among, especially in the English-speaking Caribbean, in the throwing events?
Well, there is a wealth of talent there, and I think it was just a thing of interest, and I say interest starting from the top, because our administrators do not really think of a person throwing something as a potential medal winner at a major meet. And the coaches, they gravitate towards the more glamorous events,
Yeah.
for one reason or the other. I don't think that the Caribbean just basically has sprint talent. I've always seen that Grenada, for example, has been producing these javelin throwers from Trevor Modest, Eros Rapier, and all of those persons in the 80s and 90s and so. And I grew up around Trevor Modest and Anthony Judge, Big Judge. They nurtured me in my days as a thrower. But I've seen that Grenada has had all of these, nice names known throughout the Caribbean, and we didn't have a record in the books, for example, at Carifta for javelin. And I'm like, there's something wrong here. If you look back, you'd realize too that not a lot of those throwers got opportunities to go to school in the US, because the collegiate system has helped a lot of the English-speaking Caribbean develop their throwers. Dominica has a 20-meter plus shot putter. He went to school in the US. Well, Jamaica is turning out shot putters and discus throwers every year that is capable of throwing 18, 20 meters. But to say that the English-speaking Caribbean has been recognized, or throws in the English-speaking Caribbean has been recognized, is not really a thing. It's starting now, as you pointed out, to bear fruit on the international scene. And then you're seeing more and more for young persons who possibly would have been inclined to go into the more glamorous events, transitioning into the field events, because they're realizing now that if I can't run a sub 10, I probably could pick the javelin up and be able to throw 80 odd meters, or be able to become a world-class long jumper, right? So it's just, I think, coming to be accepted that we are just as talented in the throws, and we can make a name for ourselves on the international scene. Further to that, I also think that the way our sport is and sports in general is marketed has a lot to do with persons becoming interested in throws and a whole. Because if someone sees that there are opportunities in Europe, for example, all you need to do is to get to a world-class marks, and you can get on the circuit and make a living. I think a lot of more people would be inclined to try the throws.
And I recall some years ago, Paul, your call for more attention to the field events, because and using probably the Carifta, not just Carifta to an extent too, because I think it was even at that level. All the focus used to be even on television, used to be just on the running events, and you just get the results of the field events, and people not really seeing the performances the athletes in action in the field event. But of recent, I guess you're seeing a more balanced coverage in terms of track and field, because it used to be track and field, but it's turning out just to be track. And you used to be one who always used to call for that, because your focus used to be basically on the field events, and it's people not getting to see how this athlete perform, because for some at the time it was, it's a sort of boring 3 rounds, a man just throwing, whereas, as you said, the instant gratification of watching someone run a 100 or 200. But now we are seeing that there's a lot of emphasis on the field events, and even internationally, because the coverage used to be just on the track, but we've seen that now, and I'm certain you sort of satisfied that there is now showing some interest in the field events as well.
Yeah, I'm really satisfied. Yeah, I think even in Grenada, I have been able to draw some attention to the javelin, for example. We're still struggling with the other events because I have really been focusing a lot on trying to develop javelin throwers. Because I think Grenada, we don't have the extra big personnel that we need for shot put and discus. Josh Botang is an exceptional species. We have now young Kelsey Morel Ross. She's another giant among us. So they would be persons who would excel naturally at the heavier implements. And what has been happening in our meets is that we develop a camaraderie among the throwers. So, for example, you would have them. I would normally be an official, and I would be encouraging them to start a clap. Encourage your fellow competitors.
Yeah.
To let's lift the spirits around the thing. And so sometimes the crowd gets involved, and the camera is focused over there, and a lot of the statistics about the athletes are being mentioned, and the PA system and things like that. And throughout the Caribbean, when you go to the Carifta Games, for example, Mr. Kid Joseph was usually our on the ground commentator, and he goes from event to event on the field, and he gives you a report, and that has really heightened the interest in spectatorship of our events, and it's really helping the events to become a little more recognized throughout the region.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think, Paul, that we can get more attention for the throws and combined events in the Caribbean? And I say attention regarding the focus, assistance, even in terms of scholarships being granted, all these sort of things for people who are involved in throws and combined events. And I'm looking specifically at the Caribbean.
I think there is definitely a need for some attention to be placed there. For you to be a thrower, you would need these special shoes. Yes, the sprints, the running events really have a special shoes too. But these special shoes are expensive. For example, a Javelin shoe probably would go between $60 and $120, $160 US per pair. One of the javelins that we had for Anderson back in 2013, 2014 cost upwards of $900 US. Track Blazers couldn't really manage to get one of these, and we had more than 7 javelin throwers training at the time. In a lot of instances, these guys, they use ordinary running spikes to throw. Now things are changing a little bit. I think since persons have recognized Anderson's presence on the world stage, a lot more attention is being given in our country to the field events, and particular to the throws. Starting out as a combined event athlete in I can speak for Grenada, I can't really speak for the other countries. It starts at possibly the intercol games or the school sport, where an athlete does 5, 6, 7 events on one day. And it is from that stage when you look at them and you identify that person could be probably a good combined event athlete. The drawback there is we probably will be able to find heptathletes, but because we don't do the pole vault in Grenada, therein lies a bigger problem. You will have to find the person with the right temperament, because pole vault is something that you need to be a little bit on the daring side. You know, a fella had to go up in the air with the head down and try to go over a bar. That's not, you know, the ordinary everyday thing that you see in a sport. So they would need all of these. Pole vaulting poles, for example, are not readily available in the Caribbean. A pole vault pit will not be readily available in most countries. If you don't have a national stadium, you probably wouldn't have one of that. So there's that challenge of identifying early and being able to market, because to develop them to the fullest, they have to go possibly into the collegiate system in America that would expose them to the coaching that they would need in the pole vault, for example. And that's basically what I would see as the challenge. I marketing it as a future Olympic event, future Olympic talent is another thing, because we have to wait on a particular stage of the development to be able to say, yes, that person can be world class or not. Notwithstanding all of those factors, I still think that with the recognition being given now, with the little camaraderie being built up among athletes, that and the media coverage, that that could serve as a means of helping to change the outlook, change the way that people think of those events, and help motivate some change in terms of the support that we would get coaches and athletes to help develop those events.
Okay. Let me ask that question another way now. You don't have a first-class training facility in Grenada, Paul, but still producing quality throwers. Why?
It's passion, right? And many will know of my my journey to this level right here, and it's only passion that would take a person persisting over 20 odd years to be able to get to produce athletes at that level. There was a time when we had a few, I wouldn't say weights, a few pieces of iron in Lassages, right? and we built some boxes for jumping off of pieces of scrap wood that we got around, you know. And there was a few javelins that we had that the cords and thing were falling out, and we got tape, and we taped them, and you had to put them over your knee and bend them and put them back in straight when they fell and they were twisted. The passion that I have for success in track and field, in particular in the throws, is what enabled me to dip my hand in my pocket buy and invest in reading material that I could get to study, from nutrition to strength and conditioning books and videos and all kinds of resources. I would spend my last dollar on to make sure that I get the knowledge necessary to be able to get the edge so that I can give over to the athletes. Even to the motivational aspect. I invest in a lot of reading material, self-help books and tapes and all of these things. And I pass on that information to the athletes. And we use what we have to make what we think would be the best tools for success. We use the athletes' background, their upbringing, and the fact that we do not have a lot to start off with, but the possibility of becoming something, having an education, being able to change your family's status by using sport is what keeps me going, what keeps the athletes going, and what has been able to help us to develop to the level that we are.
And you speak about passion, and does it involve the training of other folks from other sporting disciplines, like the cricketers, the referees, you know? And I'm speaking of folks I've interviewed on this program and made reference to you. So I am getting the feeling, and it's not just track and field. They were cricketers. There was the referee, the FIFA referee, you know. So I'm asking if that passion also involved that, and talk a bit about your involvement with these folks.
Okay, so let's take it one by one. The FIFA referee, for example, I mean, that's a very passionate topic, because the FIFA referee was one of our top distance runners. If you remembered Kenisha Pascal, who dominated the road running throughout the region, and her partner is the referee.
Right, the Rion Radix we talked about. Yeah, Rion Radix. Yeah.
No, the story of Rion Radix was that Rion Radix, after leaving GBSS, probably ran for two more years when he was at National College, and then he said he hung up his boots, so he done with that. And he rode a bicycle one year when Darren Hazard, one of his villagers, won the half marathon. And I said to him, young man, you ride a bicycle to the end of the race, and you talk to this young man. I think it's time that you get back into the sport. And he considered it, and he came back in. Now, after running for quite a number of years and doing exceptionally well, Rian is a student of the sport of soccer. Is a living encyclopedia, and the opportunity came for him to go into the refereeing, and he said, "Boy, coach, I'm thinking about this." And I said, "You know what? When we look at what you're going to be able to accomplish as a runner, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to be the best of Kenya. You're not going away. So let's give the refereeing the best shot that we could." And fast forward 4 years, he's one of the top in CONCACAF region. So I'm very proud of what Rian has been able to accomplish. And he's still considered, as a matter of fact, he's still the athletes rep at St. David's Trailblazers.
Oh, okay.
Right? So being a teacher, at the school, he teaches physical education. He's also very present every evening at Lassages, right? He motivates our distance runners because he does some of the training that they do, and there's a nice little camaraderie that goes around there. But we always encourage all of our sports people who come around Lassages, who are wanting to be, because I'm the go-to person. So somebody comes around Lassages and they want to lose 2 pounds, they come, coach, what do you think I should do? Somebody playing cricket and they have a little injury, they come with their coach, boy, somebody tell me you just rub a leg, or somebody, you know what I mean? You just work on injury, you just work on back, so all right, what are you thinking on this? What do you think I should do? Should I see the doctor? Whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So I am passionate about the human being,
Right.
right? And performance, and as I said, rising out of our situation, because coming from St. David's and Corinth is my hometown. Not too very far from Corinth is the notorious Lassages Coles Gap content area, where we know persons have this stigma attached to things like the ginger crew and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been able to produce athletes coming out of the era when the ginger crew, for example, was the biggest, roughest thing around. Trevor Baptiste, if you remember that name, was a so-called gang member, right? He came from that group and emerged to be a Curvter 800-meter silver medalist.
Yeah.
Right? So I have been very passionate about people, and no matter what the sport, I work with the cricketers now, for example. I worked with Ryan because Ryan was one of our, Ryan John, he was one of our
athlete.
So, in Curvter 2015, Ryan John was there representing us in the combined events.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Ryan John and Anderson Peters, they grew up together at the current government school and subsequently the St. David's Catholic Secondary School. So Ryan John would have had a conversation with one Nicholas Redhead, who I heard mentioned on the program a few times when you were speaking with Andrew, for example.
Right, yeah.
When you spoke with Dwayne Gill, they mentioned him. He is a young man who would have traveled to England to play some little games in the cricket. And someone mentioned to him, when you go back home, you must try to get yourself involved with a javelin coach. And that would make a difference in your bowling, your fast bowling. Right? He spoke to Ryan, and then he ended up approaching me to help him. And I've been working with this young man for the last 2.5 years. He's developed and is developing into a fine fast bowler. Preston McSween is one of our more prominent fast bowlers as well. He came from Barbados, a stint in Barbados where he worked with a semi-professional or professional cricket team there for a stint after touring with the under 19 West Indies team. Yeah. And he came back home, and again, someone told him, well, Ryan again was telling him, listen, boy, this injury you have there, go, man, coach will help you fix that. And surprisingly, within about 2 months, he felt a lot better coming from that. He was invited then to national trials, and he declined. He said, coach, I don't think I'm ready yet. I said, listen, let's wait it out a little bit, and then the next season you can go back in. And he's just been a success from there.
Mm-hmm. And to the point where now he's now with the West Indies team and in St. Lucia.
Yeah. These guys, they continue. I mean, I'm leaving home to come here, and he came up and said, "Coach, well, I know you're leaving, but right now I need to have my program so that I can continue continue my work." You know, so it's a joy to work with these young people, and I see a lot of I get a lot of respect from them. I see a lot of changes taking place, and I'm happy when I look at them and I see them performing. I can feel a part of their success, and I think that is the biggest reward that I've gotten throughout my years of coaching.
Yeah, because I saw a video of those guys, and it seems as if they like to train with your group, whether it was Neil and Pascal, all these guys doing their speed work, all of that. In fact, I understand that prior to going to do their physical, they normally train with Trailblazers in St. David. So the last suggest is basically the hub for these cricketers in terms of getting their physique and their physical readiness. You agree?
Yeah, I want to agree with that at that level, but I also want to give kudos here to my senior and a person who's just as passionate as me, Mr. Raymond Duncan. And a lot of those cricketers that we mentioned had their stats with Mr. Ray Duncan. He has a little cricket academy there. As a matter of fact, the cricket academy is closely aligned to the St. David's Trailblazers, and it's as a matter of fact, the parents, when they met, they decided, look, they want the name to be associated with the St. David's Trailblazers. But I wouldn't let out what the name is, but we're closely affiliated. So Mr. Duncan works with them, and he would have been the under-19 coach of the Windward Islands and of Grenada for a very long time. So all of these players, from Andrew Fletcher, who's the senior now, to come right down, has been under Mr. Duncan's guidance for some time. So there are a number of younger cricketers. There are twin brothers there, Cotton Murray. There are another set of twins, the Lambert boys. They have all been part of the program from one time to the next. So there's an understanding. You know, Mr. Duncan consults with me on things, fitness and strength and conditioning for his cricketers all the time. And we just work together to bring their fitness to the level where he can work on refining the techniques and things like that. So there's a nice little camaraderie going on in Lassages. There are a number of footballers who will come to do their individual work. You know, ask for advice. They come and they use the little gym facility. All of these things.
Paul, I know that you don't like to speak a lot about yourself, but this program also tries to give the viewers an idea of the person we're speaking about. You know, you have been speaking for quite a while about others, but let's talk about Paul, and particular, and I want you to talk a bit about that so people can understand, get an idea of that. You are a level 5 combined events coach. First of all, tell us what is that all about, because there are people who probably they just know Paul Phillip as a coach and probably Paul Phillip Javelin. So when they hear Javelin, they're associated with Paul Phillip. But as a combined coach and as a level 5 IAAF certified, well, now World Athletics certified level 5 combined coach. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, well, I started to coach at the age of 18 while still a student at St. David's Catholic Secondary School. I was still an athlete then, and my coach then was one Matthew Lambert. There was a coaching program, a level 1 coaching program being held around the time when I was in still about Form 3, and he attended it. And one of those days he brought me to see what was going on, and I think that kind of sparked the interest in terms of the coaching. Of course, I was exposed to the coaching material that he had, and 2 years later, when the course was offered, I was in Form 5, and I decided I wanted to be a part of that because I was already helping all the other athletes on the team. So I did my level 1 introduction to athletics way back in 1994. So I continued, and very soon I was producing athletes at the Carifta level. Some of the first athletes then would have been the Shamir Thomas, Kieran Francis, Densley Joseph, Kishara and Hazeland Regis. You wouldn't have heard my name mentioned with them at all, but I was there. And all of those, the Sherry Fletchers and all of those who came down that line, were part of the system that was developed in St. David's Catholic Secondary School at the time, where I taught physical education alongside Miss Williams. Later on, we were exposed to level 2, and when you get to the level 2, we had to go to Puerto Rico in those days to be able to do your level 2. But that did not come until 8 years later. So while I was producing athletes at a very high level, I mean, the level 2 did not come, because there was a system where you had to do it in the English speaking, and then you had to do it in the Spanish speaking, and throws again was not at the top of the priority list. So it took a while for the rotation to be completed. Well, I was successful at that when I did it, and I was at that time thinking that I needed to specialize in the shot put, in particular. It took another many years, I can't remember exactly now, before any other levels were actually offered. As a matter of fact, there were several changes in the IAAF education, and then what resulted was the conversion of your level 2 into something of a level 3, and then under the new coaches education. I did not go to do a level 3. I did not go to do a level 4. It was then in 2013 that the director of the regional training center, then Mr. Levy, would have reached out to me and said, I think it's time that you get to be doing something. And he recommended that I do the level 5. As a matter of fact, he went on to register me for the level 5. So I wasn't given an opportunity to decline. Right? He said, you would have produced enough. You show us what you could do at the junior level. Now we want to see what you can do at the elite level. So I went to Chula Vista, which is one of the youth training centers in California. And that would have given me the opportunity to be able to do the level 5. And I was successful at it. So I am 5 certified specifically in the throws, but I am certified up to level 3 to coach all the rest of the events.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Levy, that was the late Lenford Levy, who at the time was the director of the training facility in Nakak. I want to thank you very much, Paul. It has been a pleasure chatting with you, and I want to wish you all the best over in Bratislava, Slovakia. I'm certainly hoping that yourself and Anderson will enjoy the experience, and we're looking to hear good things from you. Paul?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the program, and yeah, we look forward to the rest of the season, hoping that we can bring some kind of glory to Grenada. Just want to wish all the athletes who are now in some mode, some form of preparation towards qualification or preparation for the games, all the success. And shout out to everybody in Grenada who's looking at Grenada TalkSports.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. I thank you. And I want to wish you all the best. Thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, then. So, folks, that's Paul Phillip speaking to us from Bratislava in Slovakia. Yes, it's all the way there, And he has been giving us all the lowdown at what's happening with Anderson Peters, as well as a sort of summary in terms of the throws and all that has been taking place with Paul over the years. Paul has been one of the most celebrated coaches, combined events coaches in the Caribbean, and has humbly, as I said, humbly provided assistance in whatever way to these athletes over the years. And I want to thank Paul for all the services he has rendered, some of which he has not even, given, because Paul has gone to the Virgin Islands, that's the British Virgin Islands, gone to St. Lucia, and he has been assisting athletes throughout the Caribbean. Whenever he's called upon to assist, he will provide that level of assistance. And no doubt I want to thank him for all the services he has provided over the years, and we have seen it's bearing fruits, no doubt. So many of these athletes that he have mentioned, some of them may not have gone on to the professional scene, but when you look back at their careers, you will notice that they have been able to go to colleges, finish up their degrees and moved on. And I think for Paul, that is his satisfaction, giving them that opportunity. I want to thank him for that. Folks, thank you very much for being part of our program. And the invitation is yours to join us next time for another edition of TalkSports. Until then, do enjoy the rest of the evening.